per usual, let's begin with the traditional market so that we can get an understanding of the broader macro landscape. This is going to be important for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as we lead into the next peak. If the rest of the markets aren't playing ball, if we're not seeing higher prices and we're not seeing a whole lot of risk coming into those markets, well, then it's very unlikely that you would see more risk come into cryptocurrencies as well. For now, headlines are still looking reasonably good, but of course, the main thing we want to look at are the charts. Starting with this morning here, Asia markets kickstart data heavy week higher with focus on China, PMI, and India GDP. Looking at India's stock market, new all-time highs yet again. So that was the close on Friday. Thursday burst into new all-time highs, then Friday into new all-time highs. This is one of your biggest emerging markets around the world, so things still looking rosy there. China is continuing on its 4-month run, closing a little lower last week, but we're now sitting in May with higher numbers than it was in January. So things still looking okay there. Notice that the headlines haven't been so negative towards China of late, especially with 4 months up in their stock market. But let's move to the US. Had a pullback on Thursday, Friday closed higher. On the weekly though, so the weekly chart closed a little lower here. The thing I was pointing out last week is even if we were to see these sort of moves to the upside to test all-time high prices, I'm still not ruling out something like that, where you get this push to new all-time highs. That was the previous old all-time high before the COVID collapse. So you had the all-time high, you had another pullback, another test to the higher prices, another pullback, and then basically market continues on its merry way. If that is to occur, well, then we've got our 50% level to the downside at 51.66. So we'll keep a lookout for that on the S&P. But overall, for the longer term view here, things are still up, trends are still up. Nothing to be concerned about according to the charts, not to the news. The US dollar closed below 105. That was this weakness line that I had drawn up on the chart, but it's still above 50%. So it's kind of in this no man's land for now. Should this begin to break down from roughly 104.3, probably going to spell more downside sooner rather than later. But while it remains in this zone between 104.3 and 105, well, that's basically just a chop range there. For the strength, for the upside, if the US dollar is to go up, definitely needs to get back above 105.2 relatively quickly. So if we continue to see this downside on the US dollar over the coming weeks, well, that's possible that we start to see a little more strength in assets like Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, because you get that weakness on the US dollar, a little more strength on those assets. Now, it's not a direct correlation, but you typically see weakness in the US dollar, commodity prices rise, asset prices rise at that time as well. So on to Bitcoin and the price chart now. Last week we had that 8% dump, 72K down to 62K, a little bit of a weak rally here, and then again, another pullback over the last 24 hours. That one there was 1.2%. Now, once I throw on these lines, it's going to get a little bit messy, but what we are looking for now, and I talked about very key specific areas that you'd want to see price remain above. And if it goes below, then it's not the end of the world, but it could just drag out this process of accumulation or let's say consolidation, because we don't know if it's accumulation or distribution yet, but it'll drag out this consolidation process for longer. That key level for now is around $65,000. So that's those previous tops. That's this line right here. Price goes below that, this will just drag out the consolidation for a lot longer. It stays under there, then you got higher chances of testing the lows at 60 and at 56. But provided the price remains above $65,000, then the odds are to the upside and sooner rather than later. So I've got a lot of these little 50% levels drawn up, and I'll zoom in now at least here for the 4 hour. Oh, sorry, on the daily here, you can see this would be the 4 hour 50% at 67.9. So basically 68 grand. And all that the price has done is bounce between 50% levels. This move to the upside pulled back dead on to the 50%. There you can see it right there. And then it bounced dead into the other 50% level. So this range here, right through the middle. And then it pulled back to the next 50% level. So you can start to see how The market reacts and responds to these 50% levels time and time again. So it's important to know what they are and how to use them. Bitcoin on the weekly had a reasonable close. It was still above last week and above that previous top, but it did have a decent sell-off leading into the end of the week. So not the end of the world because of those higher closes. So far, 2 weekly closes above the major 50%. And we are now, as Bitcoin holders, now into our 11th week underneath the old all-time high, which is exactly what we looked at in March when we had the 3-day down signal from that top, and then several of the other signals on this run up when it started to get very overheated. It seemed like we did need a fair bit of time, we, as in the market, needed more time to consolidate underneath this top before it could mount the next attack to the upside. The previous moves, that was 15 weeks underneath the top. So we're into the 11th. We're getting closer to that point now. And I dare say maybe it happens sooner rather than later. This was a different time in the market. This was still those accumulation times when the masses were still believing that it had further to go to the downside. They just thought this was a bull trap, I believe, bull trap. And they were looking for big collapses from this point. They still had a very firm belief that this was a bear market, but our signals were telling us that we were at the beginning of a bull market. Once this low came in, huge fear, market bounced away from that. And well, obviously the rest is history from that point. So on to Ethereum after last week's news of the ETF approval, but still no trading yet. Huge move to the upside, huge volume happened on that as well. And then fantastic weekly close. So for the key price level to the downside so that you don't lose the millions, we're looking at the 50% level again. The 50% level comes in at 2,800. Now it's overlapped a couple of times with this one right here. So I'll move that for now. That's 2807. That's the move to the upside. So putting that level back, Ethereum's taken out that 50% level and closed 1 week above that level for now. The next couple of weeks will be quite interesting to see whether the market is waiting for these Ethereum ETFs to come out so people can start trading ETH ETFs, or if it's just going to front run it and continue up. Obviously, we've got the one close above, so it's looking relatively strong for now. Any sort of moves to the downside underneath 34 would just prolong this consolidation. And the level to watch is, in my analysis, is $3,200. Moves underneath $3,200 is going to prolong this consolidation a lot longer than many would hope for. And then 28 or a testing of 28 is on the cards. But for now, it doesn't seem like 28 is going to happen anytime soon. And if it remains above these levels, then of course, well, it's never going to test that 28 level in this cycle. The ETH BTC chart also looking relatively strong, back above the low that ETH BTC made when ETH USD hit that low back in June 2022. That's the low there. That's the low price of $880. That's what it looked like against BTC. Things are looking all right in the short term here while it closes above the 50% level at 0.053, and the number to beat is still 0.06. That's still the next key level for ETH BTC to get above to confirm, at least my own analysis, to confirm that the ETH BTC low is in. We had a low here, had another low, a temporary break, and then a pump above, which is a good first sign. The next sign is above 6, and then the next sign is above 0.065, so 0.06 and then 0.065. So it's going to bring some strength back to ETH. Solana. And on the weekly now, we had a rejection at 50%. So at that 260,000 Satoshis, 0.0026, close below it. But for now, it's still above the 50% level on that run up. And to the upside, it's just closed underneath that level again. So the higher lows were being made in mid-April. A close beneath those levels, that is going to spell a bit of disaster for, at least in this case for this chart, Solana, over that coming next move up, because it would be in a weaker position against Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that it won't make gains. It doesn't mean that the Solana USD price won't go up. It will go up, of course, if Bitcoin's going up, but it might not be outpacing the gains of Bitcoin. It might just keeping pace. It might just continue to keep pace with BTC. Not the end of the world if that's what you're doing and you're staking or doing whatever it is that you're doing, but you're just probably not going to see those outperforming gains like you would on some other cryptocurrencies, which are putting in fresh highs against BTC. So that is going to be a big one that I keep watch of right now, especially as Solana has rejected again on the weekly at the 50% level of the bear market range. So there is a range top to low. It's come back, hit 50. If that starts to die out here, that could be ETH 2.0 in the making. Remember, ETH did that last cycle. It ran up, hit the 50% level of the bear market range of the previous cycle, and then pulled back, attempted again, and then continued to pull back. So I'm not saying that this happens to ETH. I'm just saying keep a watch out in case it does. And it doesn't mean that it couldn't come back and you say, well, you're all wrong because ETH is putting in some great upside gains here. But essentially, is it really? It might just be trading in a trading range that you can see, that's already put in on the chart that started back in late 2023. Next video. Until then, take care and peace out.